Wondered how ancient practices like acupuncture are transforming modern healthcare. Today on the Wellness Growth Show, I'm joined by Jeff Rogers, an acupuncturist with over 2 decades of experience. Jeff shares his journey into acupuncture, its growing acceptance in the medical community, and his specialization into fertility treatments. Pretty amazing stuff. From building trust with patients to running a sustainable practice, Jeff offers insights that will inspire both practitioners and anyone curious about the power of holistic healing. Today, we are sitting down with Jeff Rogers at Acupuncture Wellness, located in Troy, Michigan. Welcome, Jeff. So excited to hear your story.
Thank you.
Jeff, so your path into acupuncture started in a pretty unexpected way, working construction, tendonitis, and a visit to your dad's acupuncturist. What shifted for you during that experience?
So yeah, it was unexpected. I started in college right out of high school, didn't really find the path that I was looking for. So my dad owned a construction business and suggested, I come work for him for a bit until I can figure out what I want to do, which I did. And I was, it shortly figured out that that's not what I wanted to do for my whole life. But at the time, it was, a good way to make money. And just until I could figure things out. So yeah, I was playing hockey, lifting weights, doing all the manly stuff that we do, and working. And I developed tendonitis in my elbow. And, I went the regular traditional medicine route, went to the doc. He gave me anti inflammatories, didn't really help. I was starting to get really edgy because it was impacting my work, it was impacting my recreational life. And so I was talking to my dad about it, and he said, why don't you go see my acupuncturist? And ironically, 7 or 8 years before that, as a teenager, is when he started to see this guy. And at the time, as a 15, 16-year-old kid, I thought, he was just way out there. What are you doing? He's having me go pick up fruit, this vegetarian food for him. And I thought it was very strange. But, you know, at 21 and in pain, I was desperate. So I went and saw the guy. And the experience was just really blew me away. Fun, we got rid of the pain in the elbow, but it wasn't just come in, what's going on? Let me see your elbow. Let me put some needles in it. It was talking about my diet, my lifestyle, my habits. Have you thought about organic foods? And this was what 93, and which was not a thing, especially in Michigan at that time. I think there were a couple small stores. So I was into working out, so I wanted to take care of my body, but this was a totally different way of doing it. And so one, he got rid of the pain in the elbow, but he started me on a path of just a healthier lifestyle, and it just resonated with me and the whole approach. And he had me do this detox program, which I did. I shed ton of like baby weight, I call it, my baby fat.
Okay.
Um, I felt amazing, and so I thought, what better way to give back what I got is to go to school for it. You know, I he had gone to school in Wisconsin, and so I was going to kind of follow in his footsteps. I didn't know anything about Chinese medicine schools, but seemed like the way to go, right? He did it that way, so I was going to follow him. And I happened to get a magazine in the mail, and it was a health magazine, and in the back it had a list of all the TCM schools across the country, and I was blown away by how many there were. And so
Okay.
as I was thumbing through it, I saw the school in Colorado, and I was a skier as well, and took many family trips out there. And so, I applied to that school, got accepted, and that led me on my journey.
Did you actually get to go skiing when you were in school?
Only went skiing when the parents came out to visit.
Okay.
Struggling student,
Sure.
working, going to school full time. Actually came to love the summers because you could go out and hike and camp for free. So I got to really
Yeah.
experience the whole breadth of the state, not just the winters, and fell in love with the summers as well.
Okay. So you've been in practice for what, over 2 decades? And what do you what's changed the most in how people understand or seek out acupuncture since the late 90s? Because
There's much more knowledge today. you have movie stars getting cupping and doing these therapies, which, once you start to get that national exposure, it just helps everything. Um, it's easier to find with the internet. You can find acupuncturists. We have a national database, a national organization, as well as a state organization. So potential patients can search out, either find the state organization and go through there, or the national organization. And there's not as much skepticism around it, because today I get referrals from physicians. So that's a big boost as well. When I was first in practice, it was very common for patients to, get benefit from my treatment, go back and tell their doctor, and then him dismiss it and say, well, it was all in your head. That didn't really work. So the whole acceptance in Western medicine world has evolved. And so that helps our practice and our industry tremendously.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, fertility work became a major part of your practice. How did that start, and what makes acupuncture such a powerful tool in this area?
Yeah. So, going to school, we had courses and talked about women's health, um, but not really about fertility. Uh, Coming out of school, going into practice, about a year in, I had a patient come to me that was struggling to get pregnant, and um, I treated her just as I would treat any other person, working with reducing stress, helping affect hormone balance, and she got pregnant. And she was seeing an IVF doctor at the time, so it was in conjunction with in vitro fertilization, and that really piqued his interest. So we had a conversation, and he got on board, and really, and especially then, 25 years ago, the in vitro fertilization, um, artificial insemination, it was not as advanced as it is today. They have much better techniques. Um, they do genetic testing on embryos. So there's a lot more that they can kind of sort out before they even put the embryos back in. So at that time, he was like, anything that might help my patients, I'm all for. And
Okay.
so we just started sending patients my way, and it just, you know, it evolved. It worked. It wasn't. I think at the time, my practice got probably 70% fertility related. And as looked over my numbers, I was around 65% success rate. And that was, patients doing artificial or assisted reproductive therapy, or patients that are just trying their own. I had patients that would fail a number of times in the assisted reproductive world. And so, I would then work with them on their diet and herbs and all the tools in my toolbox. And some of those patients got pregnant just on what I was doing. So it's a very fulfilling, the in the treatment world, just because you're really helping a family achieve their dreams of parenthood. I have actually books of baby pictures when patients conceive, and they send me their baby picture, which, if I ever feel like I'm not doing a good job, I just open up those books and they're just like, whoa, yeah, look at all this.
Oh man, I love it. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you might want to touch on? I know you talked about like opening the books and seeing all the work that you've done. Is there any like specific maybe memory that you'd like to share from the fertility or pain work that you've done?
Yeah, I had a woman come to me who had been struggling to get pregnant, and she was older. She was, I believe, late 30s, early 40s, and so she couldn't get pregnant with her own eggs. So then she was using a donor egg, and so she had six failed donor transfers before she came to see me. And typically, when you're using a donor, the rates are much higher because you're using a younger person's egg. It's fertilizing. It's just a much more successful procedure. So um, doc didn't know what was going on, why she couldn't get pregnant. There was a study done in Europe on a protocol that helps to influence the blood flow to the uterus. And so there can be an issue called an inhibited uterine blood flow where the uterine arteries aren't pulsing correctly. And so if you don't do a specific test, you don't know that. There's a Doppler ultrasound test that the doctors can do to determine if those arteries are pulsing correctly, but it wasn't a well-known or widely practiced test at the time. So I just said, let's try this protocol and see if it helps. And lo and behold, she got pregnant the very next transfer.
Wow. Okay.
I'm like, that's a miracle, right? Six
Yeah.
times this time she gets pregnant. And so fast forward 2 years later, I get a phone call. She's tried two or three more times unsuccessfully, comes back to the clinic. We do the same protocol. She gets pregnant again the very next try. So, if I wasn't a believer in how, this medicine can influence the outcome of the IVF procedure, that sold me right there.
Wow. Wow. Okay. How do you typically approach treatment differently when working with fertility patients compared to, say, like someone who's coming in for pain?
So the one thing with fertility, pain, I can get someone 80% better, and that makes a tremendous difference in their life, in their uh,
Like daily.
lifestyle, the way of living, how they feel, and they'd be happy with that. You can't get someone 80% pregnant. They're either pregnant or not pregnant. So, um, one, I feel more pressure because I feel like, and I'm they're coming to me, they've struggled. Obviously, they've tried for a year, maybe two. And so, it's a very emotional process. And so, you have to be, you have to be really connected to the medicine and to the patient. And it's not easy. I mean, I kind of, I'm not the one that's not conceiving if it doesn't work, but I
Right.
basically feel it when when it doesn't work out for them. And so, and you make that connection. And once you do help them, I mean, you have a patient for life, for one thing. They are so thrilled and they, they spread the word of your practice, like well, they tell everybody about it. So, there's much more emotion tied into it. That's for sure. When I get that phone call, it makes my day. I mean, every
Like
time I get
jumping
that
up and
call, it makes
down.
my day. Oh yeah, yeah. I celebrate with the patient. We high five.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So you're one of the few acupuncturists using this uterine blood flow protocols for IVF patients. Can you walk us through how that works and maybe like why it matters?
Yeah. So the times I typically use it would be when someone is doing a frozen transfer. So, they'll do a stimulation cycle, they'll extract the egg, they'll fertilize the egg, and then they'll freeze it and they'll wait maybe a cycle or two. They may do some genetic testing on it to see, what's going on. And so, when it's time for me to come and, it's time for me to help, the only, I can control the stress port piece and then I can help with that uterine blood flow. That the eggs out, all that part is done. And so again, that's the study done that showed a very significant improvement. And so it's something that I apply to all the patients that I do frozen transfers with.
Okay. And you've worked in both private practice and hospital integrative medicine settings. What's one thing maybe each of those taught you about like building trust with your patients?
Yeah, so working in the hospital setting, there is inherited trust inherent to the fact that you're in a hospital. Patients trust hospitals. They're coming in, when they come to see a doctor in a hospital setting, they feel like he really knows what he's doing. They just automatically give that trust to you. In private practice, I feel like I have to really earn it a lot more. They could have found me online, not really know much about me. They're putting a lot of kind of putting themselves out there. I don't change the way I approach the patient ever, but I just feel like, you don't have as much leeway as to, if they're coming in, they want to feel better right away. Coming working in a hospital, you may have a little longer time with that patient. They may have a little more leniency if things don't change right away. But in private practice, I feel like, if you don't make some kind of change in 2 to 3 visits, they might not come back. So, it just, you really have to, well, earn that trust, but, just, yeah, you just don't have that inherent trust like you do when working in a hospital.
I bet it's to like kind of setting some expectations, like especially like if you're coming in for pain and depending on how long you've been experiencing that pain. Like if it's been for a decade, like wanting to fix it in a day or two treatments is probably not realistic. I mean, that's my
No.
best guess, but like if you just started feeling it, you might, I would think that maybe the body would recover quicker, but if it's something you've been experienced for a long time, it's like you got to be patient with yourself too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Usually, and it's changed over the years, but by the time someone's coming in to see me, they've, been to their primary care doc. They could have, been to the pain clinic, gone through physical therapy. They've had these multiple modalities that have failed. And so, they're coming after those failures. And so they may be dragging in here saying, oh, I don't know
You've
if
done
this is going
everything.
to work. This is my last chance, or,
Okay.
fix me, please.
Yeah, instead of the first person, they're at the end, you're like, I've
Yeah.
tried everything, please.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely the longer they've had the condition, typically the longer it takes to resolve it. And I try to make that clear in the visit. I don't give them any, you know, uh, I try to let them know what to expect. But I've been doing this long enough that, you know, I know how long it's going to take to get some changes going, or if I'm going to be able to get changes going.
Okay. So you've built a thriving solo practice, which isn't easy in this field. What's a key lesson you've learned about running a sustainable acupuncture business?
Uh, you have to be diligent. You can't get discouraged if things don't take off right away. It is easier, I think, today because of the social media. So you have basically free advertising, but it takes work. I would come in on Saturdays, Sundays, nights, mornings, early, late. I was determined not to fail. So not saying that people that don't make it aren't determined, but you have to have realistic expectations and also be confident in what you do, stay connected with your patients, give talks, get yourself get your name out there, get yourself noticed in places like health food stores. Or I would give talks for 2 people at Whole Foods. I'd set up a talk and 2 people would show up, and I would just be happy that I had 2 people there, and I could
Yeah.
tell them about my craft and inform them on acupuncture, and got planted that seed. Maybe they don't come see me, but maybe they tell a friend.
Yeah,
You
sure.
just have to be willing to do anything and everything to make it happen.
So thinking back for newer practitioners or existing, and maybe they're struggling or thinking about what do you wish someone had told you before starting your own clinic?
Um, don't get too comfortable when you're successful,
Okay.
because I went through 2 recessions. The 2008 crash, and then the I can't remember the dates of the one after that, and then COVID. Um, and there's going to be good times and there's going to be lean times. Make sure you plan for the lean times.
Okay. And then between your practice, family, and you mentioned we chatted about this before, going back to school. How do you stay grounded and healthy for yourself?
It takes work. I have a 16-month-old lab puppy who keeps me active. So
Okay.
we go on long walks. Getting it now that's getting nice here in Michigan. I'm getting her out to the dog park, and I always find when I can get into the gym and just really take care of my body, that it goes a long way. Eating healthy, taking care of my body, making sure that I take time for myself, because um, I can tend to go all in and just put my head to put my head down and just work and work and work and then pick my head up and like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? So, for me, it takes conscious effort to set that time aside for myself and to make sure that I treat myself well.
If listeners walk away with one message about acupuncture, what do you hope they remember?
Well, for one, don't be afraid of the needles. That can be a roadblock for some people. I'll have patients tell me, "Oh, I told so and so about you, but they said they're so scared of needles." The needles are fine as a hair. The sensation is very mild and it's extremely relaxing. If anything, when you're coming out after a treatment, you get very relaxed. So, great for stress reduction. And in a world today where I think we have our fair share of stress going on, if nothing else, it's a great stress relief.
Where can people learn more about you? How can they connect with you?
So my website is acupuncturewellness.org. You can email me, Jeff at acupuncturewellness.org. I'm always happy to answer questions. You can find me on Facebook, Acupuncture Wellness. I think I have an Instagram and a Twitter.
Okay.
I don't know the handles. Obviously, I don't go on them very often, but I'm getting better at that. But yeah, reach out because I'm open to a conversation. I respond to emails. At this stage in my career, I really want to give back to the community. I want to educate. I want to go back to those small little community setting talks that I used to do because I find that, if you just, and it's not even about growing my business at this point. It's just about sharing my knowledge, sharing my information.
Thank you so much for this, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Wellness Growth Show. If today's conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories, strategies, and insights from the front lines of wellness innovation. If you're a founder, operator, or health leader exploring growth into institutional markets and have a story worth telling, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out directly on LinkedIn or YouTube. And if you found this valuable, share it with a peer or post it online. You never know who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay well, keep moving, and keep building what matters.